everybody.
Hey.
How are you guys?
You're in my way.
Excuse
me.
Very good. There's well. Welcome to my home. I'm Dr. Mark Hatala, and these are my wonderful students. And we thought that we would talk today about our favorite books, because we're all readers. As you can see, I'm a reader too. And so we would have recommendations and maybe reasons why we like our books. But who would like to go first?
Me.
Please, Ashley.
I'm an English major. Love to read. I used to be a major bookworm before extracurriculars became an opportunity at school, and I ran out of time. But one of the books that changed my life and that I still think about and consider to this day. There are two books, but I think about them together because I read them back to back. So it's 1984 and Brave New World. They're science fiction dystopias where, in a distant future, there is a totalitarian government that has complete control over the lives of the entire world. Now, the big difference between them, because they're very different books, is the manner in which this government controls their people, right? So in 1984, that's where we get the idea of Big Brother and that constant surveillance and stuff.
Which I believe was a criticism of Soviet communism at the time by George Orwell.
Yeah, but the idea was that we're going to hit a point to where we have so much need for control, and the government makes so many decisions for the individuals in the world that you can't do anything, that you have no freedom because the government controls everything, because they're always watching you to force you to do that. I think about them in juxtaposition a lot because I like the method of Brave New World a lot more. I think it's a lot more intellectually interesting and a lot more sinister in the way that it's done. So Brave New World takes a completely different approach. Brave New World does with nature versus nurture. Basically, babies aren't born anymore. They're made in test tubes, and they go through advanced labs. And what they do is they use social conditioning to assign people to different classes, right? And they condition you to only be happy in the class that you are given. So that even if you take down the government and people weren't forced to be in the position that they are, they wouldn't want to change because this is their best life that they're living. So the idea is that everyone's genuinely happy. They just don't have any freedom. They're just happy because they like what you've given them, and that's all they ever want in life. There's one class of so if you are supposed to be a miner and work down in the mines and that's your life and that's what you're supposed to do, they will show pre-birth fetuses where they will give them as soon as they're able to perceive light, they will let them perceive light and then shock them. So that way, from before you're even a cognizant being, you don't like to be outdoors. You don't like flowers. You don't like light. And so you don't want to leave the mines. You are happiest when you are at work. And that idea, I feel is really compelling as a way to get people to do things. And that, I think, is a lot more sinister and something to watch out for. I see that happening a lot more in the world where people are just told that it doesn't get any better than this, and this is what you should enjoy, and given new technologies and bread and circuses, and before you know it, you're not making any decisions intentionally. You're just doing what you're told, and you don't know any better. And is that even wrong? I love these books so much. I think they're very intellectual and very mind-blowing, very transformational. They change the way that you see the world, and that's one of my favorite things about literature.
So Brave New World in 1984. The only comment I would have, B.F. Skinner wrote a book called Walden 2, and one of the criticisms of it, they said that it's he read Brave New World and missed the point, because that was the society he was proposing. Who would like to go next? Zach, please.
For me, an entire series that had a lot of influence on me was Lemony Snicket's series of unfortunate events, which was important to me because it helped me understand gray morality and moral relativity in a world where none of us can have absolute morals or we'll be destroyed. So.
Alrighty then.
Have you
In my opinion.
have you reread those two, or do you think that was more for when you were younger?
I read the earlier ones when I was younger,
Okay.
and by the time I was like 13, I was reading the older ones,
Okay.
which that's like the age that I consider my reasoning ability to have made that.
Outstanding.
So,
No, very good. Who'd like to go next?
I can go
Please.
next.
Thank you.
I think my favorite kind of book is just like classics, just because I'm really like fascinated by them. But I also like a lot of like nonfiction books, or like I don't know if I like like books based off of like true stories, or like people like a retelling of events. Like they just made a movie about them last year. But there's two books that are written by, I sat down and completely blanked on the author's name.
Well, that's okay.
So,
Yeah.
very sorry about that. But there's these two books. It's called Beautiful Boy and Tweak. And one of them is written by the father, the beautiful boy, and then Tweak is written by the son. And the son was addicted to meth. And so it just kind of like tells like the story from two different perspectives, because they're both writers. And it's really interesting to like read them, and it just gave me such like a wider perspective for like what's really important in life, like how people actually deal with addiction, because I've never had any personal experience with that, but I mean it's really crazy. It just like opened my mind to like a lot of different things, and like a lot of coping and stuff like that.
And that's really what we want from literature. Very good.
Building off of actually
Yeah,
what you
please.
said,
Maddy.
one of my favorite authors is Roxane Gay. I don't know if any of you guys know who she is,
I don't.
but she's pretty cool. And one of my favorite books that she wrote was Hunger, which is kind of about coping and stuff like that. She also wrote the book Bad Feminist, if you guys have ever heard of that book. They're just good books as they are, but
Outstanding,
they're kind of autobiographies, kind of, sort of not autobiographies. They're definitely nonfiction, but I don't know, I just really liked reading her work and understanding from like different perspectives about things, and I felt like, I don't know, she's just like, she has such a good way of like saying stuff, and like Hunger was about like her coping with something traumatic that had happened with her, and so she like started eating a whole bunch to like create a barricade.
Sure.
And so like, I don't know, just different things, like how people cope with different things, and then like how you can like work your way through that.
Of course.
And so I really enjoyed that. But I also was recently reading this book called Lost Connections by Johan Hari. And it's really interesting. It's about mental health and depression, and it's about how like nowadays we aren't looking for the root of the problem. We're just wanting to put a Band-Aid over it by like prescribing medications and stuff like that. And really it's about this loss of community, and that's why so many people are dealing with depression, is because we don't really have a whole lot of community in our society anymore, and that used to be super important. Like tribes, neighborhoods, stuff like that. You used to like know everyone that you were around, and now we have become a lot more isolated in our society. So I really enjoyed that book, and it's called Lost Connections.
Very good. Well, why don't you go ahead and I'll go last then.
Okay, so I really feel like school in general has kind of burned me out on personal reading a lot. I mean, it really has. I used to love reading. I just I don't like personal reading much anymore. And like even I'd like to think I was a good student in high school, but if there was a class I didn't do a whole lot. I didn't do a lot of the readings in English class. Like there were a few books I remember reading, like Fahrenheit 451. I actually really liked that one. But man, there were some books. If I would read, Brave New World is actually one of them. I think I read the first 20-ish pages and just put it down. I was like, I'll just bark note it. But
You guys aren't going to fight though, are you?
No, I like Brave New World. I've only ever quit 3 books in my life, and Brave New World was one of them. I tried to start it when I was 10, and like I'd never encountered a book that had multiple perspectives and didn't like label it like this is Sammy talking and this is Justin talking, you know? Like it's a difficult read, and
It
I
is
was
at
like
10.
I was 10 years old, and I was like, I am not capable of reading this book, and I was so upset about it. I was like, I will conquer it eventually.
Yeah.
And then I did like 5 years later. But
I feel the same way about James Joyce's Ulysses, but at 53, I still can't understand it. But well, go ahead. What book would you recommend?
So, I guess around probably the end of my freshman year of college, I was like, I've got to start reading again. Like, this is bad. And I'm a big horror movie fan, so I was like, I'll start reading like horror books or books that are based off of movies. So it led me down like the rabbit hole like Stephen King, which some I think is really good, some it's ridiculous. But it eventually led me not to Stephen King, but actually to William Peter Blatty and The Exorcist.
Back to The Exorcist.
I think
The Exorcist.
Yeah,
Evidently.
I think it's not only is it my favorite, it used to be like, I'd say like The Giver is my favorite book. I would definitively though now be able to say like The Exorcist is my favorite book.
And your favorite movie, ironically.
No, I think it's the best horror movie.
Best
It says
horror
my
movie,
favorite movie. It's up there, but I think on top of just really like it's very powerful. I mean, it really is like if you watch the movie, it's a lot more about the little girl. The book is a lot more about the priest and him, the younger priest, and like him going through like trials and tribulations. Like the book is very much not necessarily, well, I guess kind of a criticism on psychology versus religion. We sometimes I think focus too much on the science aspects, and that's obviously what he argues too. But the movie, it follows this priest who's very well educated, went to Georgetown, very smart, but he has a lot of financial problems. And his mother's dying, like the last family member of his intermediate family, and he's just kind of losing, I guess, his faith. And he's then tasked with, this Hollywood actress saying, my daughter is possessed, and this is something obviously, you don't hear.
I think we've all been in that situation.
Sure, yeah. And, he goes in, and as a guy who, of psychology, of, this cognitive science.
Sure.
He's like, she's just crazy. But he clearly, as it goes further on, he's realizing there's more to it. And it's a really powerful book about, faith and how do you handle faith in tough situations and whatnot. I think it's just really cool. It's almost, because William Peter Blatty's, he also went to Georgetown.
Sure.
He was trained actually to be a Jesuit priest, and it's clear that this story of this pastor is very much heavily inspired by the story of Job in the Bible in a lot of ways, except I think Job kept his faith a little stronger. But it's just very similar, though, this outline, though, of what happens if you lose everything.
Sure. Do
you still have this faith? And it's him coming to deal while this little girl is, saying these horrible, obscene things and doing these terrible things that,
As Job's
really
wife said, curse God and die. And he said, no, I don't think so. No, very good. The Exorcist, too. Mine is Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises. And I have read it so many times in every state of my life. For an example, I saw a student one time reading it in the hallway, and this is one of those like 1 in a million shots. I said, give me the line you're reading, and I'll give you the next line. And I did. And it totally blew his mind. I thought about bringing the book to sit here, but then if I did it, everybody would be like, that's a setup. And if I couldn't do it, they'd be like, yeah, right. The other aspect of it, Hemingway talks about this meal that he's having. There's a little island in the middle of the Seine River in Paris that he's having with his friend. And then he describes this walk that they take after dinner. And so I like walking after dinner too. And so I was in Paris with a friend of mine, and I said, could we just do this walk back from dinner to see where it leads to? And so I would strongly encourage anyone who's read the book or who's in Paris to do the walk, because it wasn't easy, but the street names don't change, and so they stay the same over time, because that book was written in 1924. So it took us about a half an hour of doubling back and everything, and it stopped in front of Hemingway's apartment from 1924. And I knew that because there's a plaque there. And I just broke down and cried like a little boy with a skinned knee, because it felt like Hemingway had left an Easter egg in the book for me. And I felt such a connection with him across time. And so I love that book, and I would highly recommend it to anybody. Those are our favorite books, but we would like to read in the comments what your favorite books are and why. And so we'd also like you to like and subscribe. And something else I'm forgetting.
Hit the little bell icon so you can be
Comment.
notified whenever we post a new video.
That's right.
Comment what your favorite book is.
Yeah.
Twice.
And have a great day. Very good. Well, 4:23, and the cameras didn't die. So, progress.